meetings are being recorded. If this is your first time here, let me just give you a quick background of what these meetings are about. These are what I like to call virtual symposiums, these virtual town hall meetings that we have, where we allow our various CTE schools that have programs within civil engineering, mechanical engineering, architecture and design. We allow them, as well as our industry partners and our college partners, to get together. We discuss curriculum, we discuss industry trends, we discuss various ways in which we can collaborate, work with each other so that we can continuously improve the education system here in New York City. This is our third and final engineering and architecture CTE commission of this school year. And I just want to express my thanks to both my colleagues as well as everyone on this call, because this has been just such a tumultuous school year. And I know with the schools opening and the schools closing, it's been very, very confusing for a lot of kids, for a lot of staff, for a lot of parents, for a lot of our stakeholders alike. So just thank you for bearing with us as we go through these very cataclysmic times together. If you've been reading my emails, you'll see that for this particular meeting, we're not going to be doing a formal panel discussion like we do in some of our other meetings. Instead, I wanted us to have more of an open dialogue where every teacher on this call, every industry partner, every college partner, everyone on this call today, we wanted to hear your feedback, because we're going to get into a discussion in terms of what's happening in the industry. We're going to discuss some labor market trends for the schools out there that are applying for program approval or program reapproval. Hopefully the CTE tool will help you in the application process, because a lot of schools do struggle with that part of the application that asks you to basically justify your CTE program and to talk about how your CTE program is meeting the needs of industry. Our chairpersons of this commission are the Romanian sensation himself, Dr. Michael Horinicianu. We also have Mindy No from Perkins Eastman. And presenting with me today is going to be my supervisor, our director of industry engagement, none other than the boss lady herself, Jessica Kemper. I'm going to be sharing my screen in a few moments, but before I get into that, I'm going to turn it over to none other than the famous Dr. Michael Horinicianu. Take it away, Dr. H.
Thank you, and congratulations, you made it work. For a moment, I did not know what was happening. Just so you know, that you're not unique to that. I've experienced that throughout the semester when I was teaching, that everything had to be on Zoom, so it not always went exactly the way I wanted. But let me address a bit, I guess, the topic of today's discussion. And well, I want to, and this is apropos many things, and the fact is that I am now at the end of the academic year. We are going to graduate lots and lots of new engineers that are, as of the 20th of May, they are going to be eligible for work. And I have some insights as to what's going on right now in the market. But one of the biggest insights that I could share with you is it's something that everyone knows. The federal government is actually working to put together a package that will fund infrastructure. And we're talking about somewhere close to $2 trillion, not billion, $1 trillion. So that's quite large. And I would say that for the moment, although during COVID, some of the engineering or architectural firms, if we talk about that part of the business, they were actually affected to a certain degree. Not terribly affected, but affected. They still had work. They could do the work remotely. But new work was actually slow in coming in, particularly because people were not actually building. So that was one part of the business that got hurt, that we expect that to come back. I know that our graduates are getting offers, potentially not as good as they were in 2019, but I would say that they are pretty good, so they are actually getting work, so that's important. The other part of the business is for people that, for the moment, they may decide to actually go and work in construction before they actually gonna go to college and get a degree. And the construction industry had suffered due to COVID-19. And one of the things that unfortunately happened, the construction workers had one of the highest positive rates of COVID-19 across various occupation in that. So I would say that about 58% of workers in construction found themselves facing reduced hours, layoffs, and workplace closures. So that's not necessarily terrific, because that in itself also brought with it less jobs for project managers in the field. So, but I would say to you that right now, based on what we're seeing, is that this is coming back, and I expect that the graduates that will go now into, if they decide to go into either construction directly and get training, or wanting to join unions, or trying to go into colleges. We are waiting for that. Colleges are going to be back in class as of September, most of them, and that's very good. And I would say that a lot of companies are still allowing remote work for lots of people, and that's actually pretty good, because that actually will allow people to resume work. In order for the economy to bounce back, we will need to actually have people coming into the offices and re-energizing the economy in central business districts that is pretty much relying on people coming back into offices. I would also want to mention to you that in effect, the future looks promising, and in many ways it looks promising. One is because work is going to come back, but the other thing that is very important is that we're going to adopt new ways of working. Job sites will be cleaner, safer for workers, and that will actually help safety throughout the industry. I would suggest to all of you that advise young students that are going to graduate this year and they want to go to college, that yes, engineering and architecture is a good profession to go in. There are jobs, and going forward, there will be more jobs. I will not want to take a lot of time, and I will let Mindy, my co-chair, pick it up from here. Mindy?
Thank you. So I'd like to welcome and thank everyone here today. As we know, the last 14 months have had their challenges, but I think there's some lessons learned here on reimagining what teaching and learning looks like. And in particular, the need for personal connection is even more important than ever. So, you know, as we know, the market is starting to pick up, and especially in the AEC industry, and it's shifting. But I think the need to connect with people, critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork are really integral to continuing the conversation about elevating representation of voices. So, you know, how do we enable educators and students to interact effectively with other people, or interpersonal skills and behavioral skills that help you to collaborate? So these skill sets really do transcend industry and economic conditions. And specifically, how do we address equitable access to technology, because that's really essential for the success of both students and teachers alike. And personally at Perkins Eastman, we do have global offices throughout the globe that we are starting to see the market pick up. A lot of times, initially it's the study phase, but that study phase is the enabling phase for construction. So when we start to see the studies and the master plans and some of the efforts of feasibility studies, especially in the national market, and the West Coast is just crazy for design build. I mean, we're starting to see, we can't even keep up with the proposals. So I'm happy to indicate that I'm hopeful for the future, and especially for the younger generation where they're so facile about a lot of the technology aspects, but also I think what we could help them with is some of the soft skills that, regardless of trade, is really critical in the success of an individual. So I'd like to thank our industry partners and educators and the participating schools and look forward to continuing the conversation, because this is not something that would be addressed in one cycle. I think we just need to move forward and look ahead, and welcome again. Thank you. Gav, it's up to you now.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. H and Mindy. Appreciate the chairperson remarks as always. Thank you so much for the work that you've done to help our schools throughout this school year and since your tenure of being chairs. Jessica and I are going to be doing a labor market presentation, and we want our industry partners to weigh in on the information that we're going to present today. And like I said earlier, this is not a formal panel discussion like we have in some of our other meetings, but rather we want to have a more open dialogue where, especially the folks who have been attending these meetings and you feel as if you haven't gotten your voice heard, this is the meeting for that. So we want to know what you agree with, what you disagree with. We want you to give your additional insights into the data that we're going to discuss today. Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Gavin. I agree. Congrats on handling that tech issue. You were cool as a cucumber. I'm very impressed. So let's dig into it. So today, as Gav has indicated, we're going to dig into labor market data. This meeting tends to be a highlight of all the meetings that we do every school year when we kind of focus in on labor market information. And of course, because of COVID, this information is more relevant and interesting than ever to kind of understand how that COVID has impacted the industry and what we can think about moving forward. So for today's agenda, we're going to walk through this newly developed CTE labor market tool. Gav has added a link in the chat box if you want to open it up. We're going to review some key labor market data. And then, as Gav indicated, we're going to hear from our post-secondary and industry partners. I do want to say to our school staff, we're giving you kind of a preview of this tool, and there's a lot more to explore with it. So consider this meeting your first take, an intro to this tool, and we'll spend some more time at future trainings digging into the specifics. So in terms of the purpose of this tool, the bottom line is we want to make sure that we are finding ways to support our CTE staff with thinking through how to align their programs with New York City labor market data. We do this in a lot of different ways on the industry engagement team, and this tool represents one of those ways. We do think that this tool could help CTE staff with having conversations with students about their post-secondary plans. So there's data points in here where you can think through what kind of degrees and skill sets and kind of opportunities are available to help inform students with their next steps. We think of this tool as being a complement to Career One Stop. So for those of you that are not familiar with that website, it is a US Department of Labor website that the New York State Education Department referenced quite a bit for CTE programs. And we think of this tool as being a complement and a deeper dive into New York City level data. There are also many credible industry reports out there that can be used in complement to this tool. And then lastly, we hope that this helps schools respond to this particular question that is showing up on the screen. So for our school staff, you may remember this question. It shows up on the CTE, the NYCD approval and reapproval documents, and also on the self-study process, which is now on CTS. And it's really asking our school staff to think about how labor market has informed their program design and choice of technical assessment. Just want to take a moment to share a few things with our industry and post-secondary partners. We think that having these conversations matter to you because the bottom line is we believe that CTE graduates are your future talent. We want to make sure that our programs are aligned to industry trends and standards that matter to you. And we hope from this conversation and additional conversations we have with you that you can add your expertise and deepen our understanding of the tool and the data that we're presenting today. And then just really quickly, I want to throw out some terms that we're going to be using. Maybe you're familiar with them, maybe you're not. NYCD is an acronym that stands for New York State Education Department. The New York City Department of Ed reports up to the NYCD. And so we're going to be referencing NYCD quite a bit today. And then the program approval process is a process that all CTE programs go through to make sure that they're aligned with NYCD policies and that their program is meeting really high standards. As part of that process, there are self-study reviews that schools go through with their industry and post-secondary partners. And in both of the program approval and the self-study process, labor market information is explored. So a quick preview of the tool, and Gab will give you some more specifics in a bit. Page 1 has data that includes charts that are about current and long-term employment. Page 2 has information about who is working in the field. Page 3 has employer priorities. Page 4 is a reflection guide. This is really, we think, could be really helpful for CTE programs and helping them think about how to connect the dots between the data, labor market data, and their key program components for their CTE program. And then page 5 just lists some of the resources that we have available. So this data was analyzed and created by the LMIS team. And if Jackie Kelly could take a moment and go off mute and on camera and introduce herself. Jackie is going to be here today to answer any questions that may come up about the research or analysis. So thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jessica, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me with you today. I'm Jackson Kelly, Director of LMIS. As Jessica mentioned, I'm here to answer any questions that you have about the labor market data that we presented. Also, just very interested to hear your thoughts and perspectives and how it aligns or differs from your own experience. So thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. So the LMIS team pulled from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the New York State Department of Labor, US Census, and Burning Glass. So you'll see references to those data sources throughout the tool. The reason why this data was selected, obviously there is a lot of different data we could be using and reflecting on in this tool. We chose data and charts that we think are most helpful for schools to think about program improvements. Like I said before, we want this to be a complement to Career One Stop. So the data that may not be available, like specific New York City level data that's not on Career One Stop, it is on this tool. And we did source feedback over the course of this whole academic year. We did a focus group with a bunch of teachers across a variety of commissions. We had lots of follow-up conversations with teachers, our industry partners, our chairs, our post-secondary partners, CT Central staff. A lot of people have weighed in on this tool. I do want to take a moment just to be honest about the limitations of this tool. So as you spend more time looking at it, you will see that potentially not every CT track is addressed. So for instance, the specifics of mechanical engineering or the specifics of around electrical engineering are not addressed in this tool. It is more useful as an overview of the entire field. So it's very inclusive of a lot of engineering and architecture jobs. It is not a drill down into specific pathways. We also know that this data is not evergreen, in particular because of COVID. So for instance, chart 2 does not have the impact of COVID folded up into that chart. And we hope to update that chart when that data is available for New York City. Also, the tool shows us the trends, but not necessarily the why behind the trends. There's other labor market that you can use. I'll reference Career One Stop on your own if you want to take a look at that to kind of do a deeper dive. And then of course, the Department of Labor and the Bureau of Statistics can be used. Just a quick moment here, I want to talk to our school staff about tips in terms of responding to the labor market question that you saw on a previous slide. I won't walk through this, but here are some things that we would recommend that you keep in mind when you are responding to that question. Gav has also added a link in the chat box, which has an actual template response. We don't want you to do a copy and paste, but we do want to kind of show you what the high standards are for using or responding to that question and how to use a CT labor market tool in that response. And then lastly, just want to quickly just highlight here the chart that shows up on page 4. That's the reflection page. What we were trying to do here, as I mentioned before, is connect the dots between the charts that show up and the key 6 program components of any CTE program. So those are outlined there. And the idea is that you can think about those charts when you're responding to that question and potentially fold all those thoughts and reflections into your polished response to the labor market question in the NYCD and the CTS self-study documents. And I think with that, I'm handing it back to you, Gav.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Jessica. All right, so once again, I'd like everyone in the audience to weigh in on this information that we are presenting. I'm just going to go through a few charts that's found within the CTE labor market tool. And once again, for the industry folks who are on this call and you're wondering why exactly are we discussing this, again, the whole point of our career and technical education office, especially Jessica's team, is that we want to make sure that there's always some sort of alignment between the needs of industry and the fact that we are doing what we can to rightfully and sufficiently prepare our young people for these high demand careers. So all CTE programs at some point or another must get state approval or state reapproval. And our schools are required to put together a short report where they talk about what's happening in industry and how exactly their CTE program is preparing their kids. So we're going to go through some various charts that talk about the needs of industry. And again, I want to hear back from everyone once we're done. Do you think that these stats align to what you see and experience for yourself, or are we completely off track here? So we definitely want you to weigh in. All right, so for chart one, we have the types of organizations doing the most entry-level hiring in engineering and architecture in New York City. And as you can see, typically we see the same trend year after year where the professional / scientific / technical services sector, these sectors tend to be the most that hire professionals within the engineering architecture background. We also see that manufacturing comes up a lot. And even though a lot of our CTE programs don't necessarily focus on manufacturing per se, it is definitely a sector that many of our programs touch on. A lot of our kids may be surprised to know that there are other sectors out there, not just the traditional technical services and not just manufacturing also, but when you think about city government, when you think about public administration, when you think about information services or finance and insurance, there are definitely careers there for engineers and architects as well. We also see that there are a few within the healthcare, social assistance, and even the retail trade sectors. So what I find very interesting about this chart, not just for our commission only, but all 8 commissions, is that oftentimes, you know, we tend to pigeonhole our kids into certain boxes, right? And we think that certain career titles only exist in a certain frame or a certain parameter. But in actuality, there's a diversity of different sectors out there where certain CTE skill sets can be applied. Jump into chart 3. This is a pie graph that represents the years of experience of people being hired within the engineering and architecture field. And this is a bit different from our automotive sector. I'm sorry, people keep coming in the room and they keep popping up and blocking my screen. If somebody else who's a co-host, can you just let them in? All right, so this chart shows what the years of experience is for most folks who have been getting hired within the industry over a 6-month period from October to March. Now, this is a bit different from what we discussed in our last commission meeting, our last automotive and transportation commission meeting specifically, because we know that for the automotive and transportation trades, you don't necessarily need that post-secondary degree. But when it comes to engineering, we see that the vast majority of jobs, you definitely need some sort of experience and some sort of post-secondary degree to get into some of these more high-paying jobs within engineering. So the majority of folks within this field have an experience of 3 to 5 years. Compared to automotive, we saw that there were more folks that had 2 years and less experience who were working in that industry. But for engineering and architecture, the majority of workers that are getting hired have 3 to 5 years. Next, I actually really like this chart because we had some backlash for the last meeting because a lot of professionals felt, hey, wait a second, the wages that we're seeing here for the automotive jobs, they're way too low. But I think, in my personal opinion, that this looks fairly accurate for our architecture and engineering professionals. So this is just a rough guideline of what you can expect to make once you get out of college. You get into an entry-level job in an engineering firm, an architecture firm, and then as you become an experienced professional, you can definitely make well above 6 figures. All right, the next chart, this is the most commonly held educational credential for engineering and architecture occupations. So unlike automotive and unlike construction, which are the two other commissions that I work with, we see that in this particular case, the bachelor's degree is very much highly desired. Now, I was a recruiter before, and I see some of my past colleagues from my past job on the call as well. When I was a recruiter, the only jobs that I really came across where firms were willing to hire somebody without that bachelor degree was maybe if the candidate was an architectural drafter or something along those lines. But for the most part, this is one of those fields that we definitely do encourage kids to try to get a post-secondary degree. That's not something I say much because, you know, I'm a big supporter of the skilled trades and I don't believe college is for everybody. But when it comes to this particular sector, we see that the vast majority of jobs definitely does require the bachelor's. All right, let me just minimize this window for a second. All right, if you look at chart number 6, this shows a breakdown of the gender and ethnicity distributions for the top 3 occupations within engineering and architecture. All right, so what was interesting is that just a few weeks ago, I had the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers present because that's one of the groups that's trying to get more participation from our Hispanic kids to get into the STEM field. So very glad for that partnership that we have. And just a quick plug for them, in case we have any CTE programs on this call that you are looking for more industry partners to align yourselves with, the folks at Society of Professional Hispanic Engineers, Hispanic Professional Engineers, they're very much willing to talk to you and your kids about getting them interested in STEM. All right, so for architects, we see that the majority are white. We have a few Black, few Hispanic. There's actually a pretty sizable number of Asian and Pacific Islanders. And I can say also from growing up when I was a kid, culturally speaking, the STEM fields and engineering, that's something that's very, very much pushed within a lot of the Asian communities. We see the same is true for civil engineers. We have a pretty sizable chunk there as well. And for architectural and civil drafters, we have about a smaller percent of the Asian populace there at 8%, 9% Black, 27% Hispanic. And for all 3 of these top occupations, we see that, of course, it's pretty male dominated. And that's why there's so many different scholarships and initiatives and movements out there to try to get more of our young women into these fields. And what you should do is keep up to date with some of the emails that we send, because from time to time, we do send out different resources and scholarships and informational pieces that you can share with your kids who are interested in pursuing these fields, whether or not they even are enrolled in a CTE program in engineering or architecture. So just be on the lookout for these emails that we send. All right, if you look at chart number 7, this is the minimum education levels sought in engineering and architecture for entry-level workers. Now, again, as was previously shown, in the pie graph, we see that the bachelor's degree comes out on top, where the majority of firms out there, they want to see that our kids at least have that 4-year degree. But there definitely are still some opportunities out there also for those that only have the high school diploma. All right, for chart number 8, I think this should come as no surprise to most of us. This shows the in-demand transferable skills, which are listed in entry-level jobs. Now, when we say transferable skills, we're specifically talking about the non-technical skills, the more of the soft skills. And I know a lot of people may not like that terminology, but we're talking about the other employability skills or the transferable skills, or the other non-technical skills that are needed in order to be successful in this job. Time and time again, we see that Microsoft Office comes out on top. And this was the same thing for our automotive commission, and it was the same thing for many of our other commissions as well. A lot of employers want our candidates to have a good, adept understanding in Microsoft Office. And as for me, I said this in the last meeting as well, I've been using Microsoft Office since I was maybe about 8 years old when I first came to America. And I thought I was somebody that was pretty skilled in Microsoft Office until I realized there's so many more advanced features. There's so many complicated formulas. And can you just keep yourself on mute, please? There's just so many advanced formulas that you can use in Microsoft Office and in Excel and Access and Word and Outlook. There's just so many powerful tools available there. And I think a lot of times with our kids, they may say to you, yeah, I already know Word, I know Excel. But really, a lot of times when kids say this, and even when we as adults say this, we mean that we know how to do data entry, or we know how to write an essay, or we may know how to copy and paste, but there's so many more integral and sophisticated features involved in Microsoft Office, and I don't think you can overteach it. I used to be somebody that think, you know, you don't really need to spend more than a few days, maybe a couple of weeks teaching Office, but there's some very, very powerful tools there. And next up, every employer wants this, right? They want communication skills. And as teachers, we know how difficult it is, right? This is the social media generation where kids, they type in acronyms and they don't pay much attention to spelling or grammar. And if you look at the Twitter updates, the Snapchat updates, the Instagram, the Facebook updates, sometimes I cringe and how people, you know, their writing style is pretty bad. And it's a hard thing to teach because you're just so inundated with misspellings and improper grammar that a lot of people, they now have an inability to articulate their thoughts. And when I was an educator, I used to try to force my kids to talk in complete sentences. A lot of times I get emails, hey, mister, can you send me more info about that thing you discussed? I don't know. I discuss about 100 things every week. I don't know what you're referring to, you know, and a lot of times we have the email addresses and you don't know who it's coming from. There's no signature there. There's a lot of typos there. So let's keep drilling into the minds of our kids, the very importance and the significance that rests behind having communication skills, because this is something that's needed, not just for engineering, not just for architecture, but for all professions. And of course, teamwork and collaboration, that always comes up for this sector and many others, being detail oriented, being organized, being somebody who researches, being somebody who's problem solving oriented. These are all typical traits that I think would take none of us by surprise. All right, for chart number 9, this represents the certifications that are in greatest demand for entry-level workers in engineering and architecture. So what the LMIS team did was they pulled the various certifications out there and they did an analysis to see which one shows up the most for the engineering and architecture jobs. I was a bit surprised by this. The driver license comes out hands down on top as being the most valued credential for this sector. Now, being somebody who was a recruiter in the automotive and construction industries, I absolutely expected driver licenses to come out on top, but I was a bit surprised to see it for engineering and architecture. Lead is there in the top 5. I thought lead would be a little bit higher, but you also have these various other certifications, such as the licensed professional engineer, which I thought would be a bit higher, engineer in training certification, and you also have the ABET accreditation as well, certified energy manager, and security clearance is something that comes up also amongst different commissions as well. All right, so those are the various charts that you will see on the CTE labor market tool. And again, this is especially helpful for the CTE staff members on this call, because once again, when you're doing your self-study application, when you're doing your program approval application, feel free to use this data so that you can speak towards how you're preparing your kids and what the industry is looking like and what you're specifically doing to prepare your kids so that they have a leg up once they graduate. All right, so that was the presentation, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I just wanted to hear some feedback, and wow, we have a pretty good crowd. I wasn't expecting so many people today. Welcome again, everybody. I saw a few latecomers. Really appreciate you being here. All right, so I just wanted to hear from those of you that saw this presentation. Did anything stand out to you? Did any data verify your own experience, your own observation, or did anything stand out as, you know what, that's not true. I've witnessed something totally different in my workplace, or I've witnessed something totally different in my industry. So I just wanted to hear some feedback. I'm going to open up the floor.
Pete, if I may comment on something that you touched on, and it shows in the statistics, communications. And the people that are actually going into the engineering, and I'm going to skip the architect. Architects tend to be much more communicative than engineers. And engineers are perennially struggle to actually be able to communicate their thoughts. They like a computer, a corner, and leave them alone. That's not the way to succeed. So it is very important to instill from the high school level the ability to communicate, both verbally and in writing. The number of credits that are available at the bachelor's degree is limited, and as a result, a lot of the teaching kind of skips communications, and that's not necessarily good. And that's a very important ingredient, and your surveys are actually showing that. So I just wanted to say that kudos. I mean, you capture a very important ingredient in this whole ability to integrate our children into these professions. Architects, I'll
Yep.
let Mindy speak about.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll add to the architects part. There are some who believe that most architects are good communicators, but I think some of it may be generational, where especially with technology these days, they're more comfortable like sending you a chat rather than talking to you, or writing in brief sort of segments of sentences, and especially if you have to sell work or you're part of a presentation, and most of it is teamwork. You don't really you aren't successful by yourself. So how do you communicate with your team? Are you able to lead? Are you able to get your thoughts across in a way that's really cohesive? So those really are important elements that I spoke about earlier, but it's reinforcing Gav's chart that I think regardless of industry, how you communicate with people, connect with people, especially if you're working remotely, how do you do that? And use technology, but also technology is not everything. That there's a way to connect with people that go beyond just the use of technology. So.
Gav, if I may comment, I looked at the data that you shared with regards to the industry that employs the engineers in the field, and manufacturing, I believe, was the second. But I also looked at the industry certification, right? And I'm not seeing that with any certification within the manufacturing industry being mentioned on that. Recently, I was researching on, maybe a level 1 manufacturing certification, which I was able to find. That is something I'm also looking into having my students being prepared for as well, so that they can get into entry-level positions. So.
All right, thank you for that. I don't know if Jessica Cracchiola or anybody from the New York City Business Solutions team is on the call. If anybody is from that organization on the call, please feel free to weigh in, because I myself, that's a good point that you raise, Rohan, because I'm curious to know, are there any specific certifications that the employers in the manufacturing industry are looking for? Because I myself, I'm not quite familiar if there's any standard certification that these employers are seeking.
Hi, Al. I can chime in on that. I will tell you what I'm seeing right now with manufacturing employers who are seeking to hire. I know that the employers who we're talking to are more than happy and willing to onboard somebody that's coming from a CTE school with little experience, and they will guide them towards training. They will guide them towards on-the-job training. And if they're pending certificates, we have employers that will sponsor some of that as well. I'm not seeing too many employers say they must come with X years experience and all these certificates. Right now, employers seem to be very open to onboard and train. I think that has a little bit to do with labor shortage and things like that. But right now, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Jess. And I've come across a lot of industry partners as well, where they just really want a young person who's willing to learn on the job. I've come across a few employers where they're looking for somebody who's into being in the shop class, right? They want somebody to work on the CNC machinery or something similar to that, and they're not necessarily asking for a particular credential. So that's been my experience in recruiting and dealing with some of our industry partners, that it's not a specific certification that they want in manufacturing, but somebody who's willing to actually get into that field. And the thing is, what's kind of difficult about this is that for this particular commission, we're very big on STEM in college here, not so much with our automotive and construction commission, but I feel like a lot of the kids who are in our STEM programs, they tend to overlook the opportunities within manufacturing because their eyes are really set on becoming maybe a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer, but there are these other subsectors as well that I think many of our kids are overlooking. Mig, I see that you're here. You wrote something very intriguing in the chat box. Do you want to unmute, Mig, if you're still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Yeah, so I just noticed specifically with chart 9, you were mentioning the driver's license was kind of a surprise, and I feel that that's a bit of a surprise too, especially in New York City. And something I did notice over the pandemic course is that a lot of available jobs in the architecture engineering field were more inspection related. So, when you're, say, joining a firm as a, entry level bridge inspector, there is a expectation that you're going to be able to, utilize, be someone who can drive like the equipment trucks, they have these vans or equipment trucks that, have a bunch of different types of equipment that you would need to, get up into the, support points or access points of like a bridge or something like that. So, there's that expectation for these sort of inspection roles are kind of more similarly aligned with, say, construction. So, that might be a reason why there's been such a boom in this driver's license requirement in entry level positions. So I'd be curious to see what maybe this looked like prior to that. So that'd be like an interesting statistic to look at. And I guess since I'm already talking, I just kind of wanted to mention really any of these certifications in chart 9, besides the engineering training cert, and I'd say the ABET accredited, obviously coming from ABET accredited, you're graduating from an ABET accredited college, the engineering training certification, and then possibly the lead certification. I know there's like some exams and stuff, and then obviously the OSHA cert. Those are all very highly sought after, but really anything else here, like you can't expect a entry level hire to be a licensed professional engineer or a registered architect. So I'm curious how those even showed up in some of these entry level positions, that sort of thing. So yeah.
All right, that's a good good observation there, Mig. Jacqueline, if you're still there, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on what Mig just said. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw when you wrote your comment in the chat, and so Gav, I'm really glad that you drew attention to it, because I thought that was a really interesting insight, that a lot of the recent engineering jobs have been about inspection related, and that would lead to some of the focuses of what is in the job ads. In terms of what the 5 you named that you thought made a lot of sense, and the couple you named that you thought seemed less relevant for entry level, that's hard to answer off the cuff, but if I had to make a guess, I would say that when there are economic downturns, what often happens in industries is that employers have the ability to request credentials that are more advanced than they typically would request for entry level, because there are more people out there who are seeking employment, so that you do have sort of a entry level jobs do become a little bit more credentialed, might require a little bit more education than they would if you weren't in a more standard time of employment.
Great. Thanks for that, Jackie. All right, Dr. Jax, I see that you've been patiently waiting. Go for it.
What's up, Gavin? Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I wanted to actually build off of what Mig was saying. I was looking at chart 9 as well. We offer OSHA at our school, and we work with a college that is ABET approved, and a lot of what Mig was saying with needing those credentials to get into these entry level jobs, they also mean college, which makes sense, which ties into your other graphs about having a bachelor's degree. In some of our conversation, LEAD has come up a lot in what kids should be working towards. So I'm just wondering from any of the professionals or the post-secondary partners, if there are programs and ways that we can at the high school level start preparing kids better for those, since, you know, we need to build up the skills when they get to college, but a lot of these credentials aren't really available to kids at the high school level. So I'm wondering, you know, other than OSHA, if any of these other credentials can really start at the high school level, and if so, maybe point us towards some resources where we could start implementing them.
We have 73 people on the call. Is there no one with an answer to that? Because that's a question I've had for quite some time as well. I'm not so sure if LEAD is something appropriate for most kids, but I definitely want to hear feedback from our industry folks on the call as well. Is that something?
So I've taken the LEAD exam, and there's, I would say, strategic issues that could be taught at the high school level, but there are specific guidelines on what LEAD is looking for when you take the exam that may require a bit more maturity and sophistication about, you know, climate change and carbon capture and renewal. So these are really, I think, complex topics that can be generally taught in a strategic and overview at the high school level, but I think it would require also follow-up afterwards beyond the high school level. And LEAD is, you know, leadership in energy and environmental. So these are topics that a lot of kids are really passionate about, and we should be focusing on. And we should be teaching it at the high school level that, you know, good stewards of the climate are on a planet, and, you know, sustainability and materials and resources and recycling. These are all aspects that I think that a lot of kids are really interested and passionate about that could be taught at the high school level.
Very great. Thanks, Min.
Mindy, just to add on that though, is there, I mean, we've spoke with a lot of different architects. I believe Jesse's also from your firm at Perkins Eastman. You know, he showed us like different softwares like Grasshopper that can integrate into AutoCAD and Revit, which is something I think a lot of people on this call would use in their engineering programs. So is there like a starter level that we could like start building up the skills, even if they're not really, you know, ready to take a certification exam? Could we maybe get, is there something where we could have like a little bit more age appropriate entry level type of thing, no pun intended, for high school kids?
No, I think the delivery of the education and the program would be absolutely appropriate. I mean, these are, you know, sustainability, air quality. These are all topics that we actually live from day to day. And I think it's just establishing a program to help deliver that education, because regardless of what age you are, these are something you could actually empathize with and you experience every day. So yes, I think it can be done. I think it's just a question of gathering the information of a program that would be established in a way that can be delivered throughout.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mindy. Okay, Susan and Nicole, I'm going to participate for you as well. Okay, go for it, Susan, the right architect.
Yeah, I agree with what Mindy was saying about the LEAD exam. I also think, though, that New York is really in the front of a lot of the sustainability issues with the climate mitigation, and for high school students to get a general overview of all the kinds of things, passive house, solar, wind power, like sort of an understanding of all the things that are impacting architecture and engineering, rather than maybe learning exactly what passing the LEAD exam is about. I think overview of those sustainability programs that are really going to impact how our built environment is designed and built over the next 10 years, it's going to ramp up in a crazy way. And I think that knowledge would probably be the most helpful for them.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely agreed there, Susan. And Nicole, I don't know if you're still there, but I would love for you to touch on this for us, because I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but we have a great partnership with the Department of Buildings. And Dr. Jacks, I think even some of your kids were a part of the DOB's Youth Leadership Council. So even though some of our CTE programs may not be directly teach and lead, there's definitely some sort of segue there. Nicole, do you want to just briefly touch on the YLC and the lead instruction that some of the kids got?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me.
Yep.
So yes, so for the past 2 years, Department of Buildings has been holding a Youth Leadership Council, and it specifically focuses on, every year we focus on sustainability, construction safety. This year we specifically focused on forensic engineering and architecture and design. Specifically when it came to sustainability, and actually all of our staff from Department of Buildings taught the session regarding all of these topics. And so our staff from sustainability touched on LEED, carbon emissions, everything that is going on with sustainability from now until, I think, as Ms. Wright mentioned, for the next 10 years and beyond. And it was all high school students from CTE programs. They were anywhere from sophomore year to senior year. And it was taught at a general level to where they understood, and they even presented on it. They picked any topics from sustainability or the aforementioned topics, and they presented on it. And LEED was one of the things that we touched on.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Nicole. And hopefully, Nicole, you guys are going to be running that program again next year, because I'm pretty sure a lot of our schools on this call would love to get their kids involved.
Yes, we are. We look to do it again for the 3rd year. So yeah, definitely we will start. We don't really start recruiting. We just finished. In this month, and we won't start recruiting again until maybe around October. Yeah, like around October, November. So you'll be hearing from us again. Thank you.
Yep, I love the program, and it has a similar setup to like what we do with the kids with the ACE, where the kids get knee deep into research, and then they get to present their findings and their analysis to industry partners. Excellent, excellent program. Thank you for running that, Nicole. So I wanted to also put this out there for our industry partners, since we have a lot of folks on this call. Beyond the regular social distancing and wearing the mask, are there any other particular industry trends you think our schools should be aware of? Anything happening in your workplace, in your industry, that you think our CTE schools need to be aware of as we are preparing our kids to graduate and to enter into the industry? Any insights? Are there any new ways of doing business, any new software, any changes in work dynamics?
Just
Yes.
wanted to add something. They OnShape, but with the education enterprise is pretty interesting. I was able to use that during the remote session, where the school was able to use its domain, and the students wouldn't need to create a new account or anything like that, just their regular. And I find it very fascinating, and monitoring the student progress, and other persons within the CTE or the school community can even have access to what the students have been designing and can see their workflow and everything. So I want to encourage that. Something that also that I would love for us to consider as we move into the new school year is to keep this blended approach of in-person and remote, and to be prepared for that, and to organize our curriculum and our facilitation within that framework as well, because I don't see, because in fact, there were students who I believe remote did excellent for. There were students who usually be distracted in the class environment, and they were focused and they became successful. And yes, there are some individuals who it didn't work for, but yeah, I'm seeing a blended approach going back as school reopens.
Yeah. What has your school been looking like, Rowan? Do you actually have a good amount of kids coming back, or the majority are still at home?
No, majority are out. So we have more all our students are on remote. You know, we have about 18 to 20 students who come in on a daily basis, you know, so pretty much. And we have been keeping good tab, you know, very good support community, making sure that we monitor their progress.
Great, excellent. All right, Susan?
I put it in the chat, but just students have to, or employees have to have access to high-speed internet and a computer. And this is a social issue, right? That a lot of people don't. But it used to be when you went into an office, they provided it for you. Now you have to have it at home. So that's an issue too.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Anyone else? Any other updates from our industry folks that our schools need to know about? Any school updates that we want to share with our industry partners?
Yeah, this is Anna.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as many of you know, I work for Grant Associates, and we are helping get opportunities, internship opportunities for your CTE students. And again and again, I want to highlight that it is so critical and important for students to be able to express their interest and passion for the industry, regardless of their skill level, regardless of what they know. I think with what we are seeing currently, there are a lot of opportunities for students to jump into remote internships, and hopefully in the summer, some will be in-person opportunities. But the ability to say, I'm interested in construction, I'm interested in finding opportunity in architecture, carries so much power to the employer who is looking to share their time and teach something to students. And oftentimes we don't hear that. And it's really hard to encourage students to actually express their interest in just verbally, just verbally state, this is what I want to do. So, and I think it's, it's hopefully a small ask, but it's probably a hefty one at the same time. I understand, encourage your students if they are enrolled in a certain CTE track, and in this case, engineering and construction and architecture, just encourage them to be curious and keep stating that this is what they want to do. So opportunities will open up if they connect to that passion, if they start being more curious and just sharing and being more inquisitive about it. So employers definitely looking to hire even with minimal skill, but with lots of interest in diving deeper into the industry.
Thank you, Anna. Always a pleasure hearing from you. Tunisia, I see Tunisia Riley has a question in the chat box. How can I motivate my hands-on students that are zoomed out? How can I motivate my hands-on students that are zoomed out? And Tunisia, did you mean motivate them to continue doing virtual learning? Is that the heart of your question?
No, what I'm talking about is that, a lot, so my students who are preparing to go to college, they're doing what they got to do academically, right? But then we have our students who want to go into construction, who want to go into more hands-on fields. And so they're applying for these programs, but then the programs are like, okay, but it's going to be virtual, and this is what you got to do. And they're losing these opportunities because they're done with that. Like, they're like, I can't sit on a computer week after week after I've been sitting on a computer day after day with school. How does this connect to construction or, any of these hands-on things? This is just not what I'm looking for. And, I'm trying to get them to see the silver lining, but it's a little hard. They're like, no, you can't tell me that I'm going to sit here for like the next 6 months and be on a virtual program, and then this is what construction is, or this is what this trade is. So it's been a little hard.
Yeah, definitely, Tunisia. I think a lot of kids can definitely relate to that. A lot of us adults can relate to that as well. Does anybody want to chime in? But I think that feeling of Zoom fatigue and being zoomed out is something that we are all facing just in general. There definitely are still programs, though, Tunisia, where there's hands-on learning taking place. Again, just be on the lookout for some emails from me, because we do have some of our industry partners that are doing some in-person training, all right, for our graduating students and for our alumni as well. And just be on the lookout for that, because there are definitely some hands-on and not totally virtual trainings that are still happening. All right.
Gav?
Yes, Dr.
One of the things that I observe with students is that once they are on Zoom, their tendency, and I've experienced that last year when this whole thing started, that they put a picture and that's it. And as soon as I started to teach in the fall of 2020 and then spring of 21, I said, participation is part of your grade. If I don't see you moving, it's, as far as I'm concerned, you are not there. And then you have to engage them. Once you see them, you cannot just let them sit there, but you have to engage them and you have to force them to communicate. And that comes back to the idea of communications. A lot of them do not like that. And as a result, they get bored. They said, anyway, it's recorded. I can look at it later on. It's very different than being in front of a class. So hopefully September will bring about the resurrection of in-person classes, but you must find a way to get them to communicate. And it's not easy, but it's doable. And if they know that they're being judged by that, they will tend to communicate. Yep. You have to engage them. There's no two ways about it. And quite frankly, I had a student that he wanted a higher grade and he couldn't get it because he did not communicate. And I explained to the student, just graduated, that when he's gonna go and look for a job or put in for a proposal, you have to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And that's part of the communication. So that is part of the educational system that has to actually get them to do so.
Great. Thanks for that, Mike. All right.
Gav, can I jump in for just 1 second on that comment?
Yeah, go for it.
Just, you know, as administrators and teachers, I just want to let everybody out there in the industry know that our teachers try very, very hard to do it and get the kids to engage. But we're stuck between a rock and a hard place because the Department of Education says that the kids do not have to put their cameras on. The kids do not have to speak. They can speak into the chat. And we're left, especially in the CTE realm, when you're virtual, it's a battle that we're trying to convince the kids to do. But at the end of the day, we're not being supported by Central when it comes to mandating that the kids turn on their cameras. And in a sense, I understand it. There are a lot of kids that have, you know, are not comfortable with their home environments or things like that. But this is one of the challenges that we have. Just putting that out there.
And by the way, when Agron says he doesn't feel supported by Central, he's not talking about me. He means other people. Just to be clear.
So funny.
But yeah, if that's not painfully clear and obvious to everyone, a lot of things that our schools want to do, often their hands are tied because of certain internal regulations and policies here. I myself have been a witness to that because last summer I was a site monitor and it was my job to check in with a bunch of our kids every week, and none of them wanted to turn on their cameras. And I mean, some of them—
By the way, Gab, did they get paid?
Did who get paid? Me?
No, not you. The students.
Oh yeah, the student. Yes, all of our students.
Okay, you don't turn on the camera, you don't get paid. And quite frankly, no, there is something here that we're taking the easy way out. And I'm sorry to say that your management, it takes the easy way out. It's easier to say, okay, it's okay, don't turn it on. We are with you. We suffer with your pain and so forth. It's not going, life is not like that.
But it's different in a private university like ours, but they're If I could, Gav, I'm sorry, I just have to throw in my 2 cents. Michael, I agree that there's an import, right, to having a high-level professional discourse and being visual about it, especially in a visual trade. But the vast majority of students, especially public school students, unfortunately, are dealing with a number of other technological and social and emotional limitations, sort of combined with what Gav was mentioning earlier. So to your point, it would be great to uphold it and sort of establish those expectations, but to mandate them is something that, to bring it back to Agron's point, is both contractual for our teachers, and then also from the central side, doesn't align to larger equity initiatives.
Maximilian, I will say to you something that has been said to me many years ago. Learning is not all fun. There is a rigor in learning that you have to adopt. And unless you do that, at the end of the day, you are not successful.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can say. I said it to my kids, and I'm trying to say it to my grandkids as well.
Dr. H, we all agree with you. The problem is, you see, us here in DOE, we are the media's punching bag, right?
Oh, I know.
Anything we do or don't do, we're going to end up in the New York Post or the Daily News. Principal Maximilian forces his socially, emotionally
yeah, I understand that. I'm not ignoring it. I'm saying this is part of life.
Yeah.
And that's why at the end of the day, you have to take the system and bring everyone up. You don't dumb it down. You have to lift everyone up. That's at least philosophically where I'm coming from. So that's not, you need to get support also from the higher ups.
Can I invite you?
Is Jessica around?
Can I invite you to one of our meetings in the Tweed building, Dr. H, so that you can speak to our chancellor and our executive superintendents?
They won't throw me out?
Hopefully in September it will change.
Well,
we'll go back in person.
For sure it will change by the end of the year.
Yeah. So we definitely hear everything you guys are saying, and we want the kids to participate and stuff like that. But oftentimes there's just a lot of internal policies here that our teachers
I understand that.
abide by, and it's very easy for it's very easy for things that go astray in the Department of Education to make the mainstream media, and a lot of times it's a lot of legal battles here. It may seem very, very simple on the outside looking in, but working in this bureaucracy that we're in, oftentimes there's a reason why certain things are the way they are. But yeah, we definitely agree with you though, Dr. H.
Yes.
Yeah,
I have a request.
Yes.
So we are happy to provide feedback on curriculum. Every so often we get a request for reviewing, but we would like to see, a timeline and as much lead time as possible. Sometimes we get, oh, could you please review this curriculum? But, sometimes the chair of the department is busy with exams or whatever it might be. And so we would like to have at least a month or two before we do reply, not at the last minute.
Yes, thank you for that, Marta. And let me just reiterate what you just said to the schools on the call. For any CTE program that's on this call, let's say you're going up for approval or reapproval and you need a college partner to review your curriculum, please don't wait until the very last minute. Don't wait until your program quality manager says to you, hey, you haven't gotten your review done, and then expect us to turn something around overnight. Please just give us a heads up, all right? So if your program is going up for approval and you need industry partners or college partners to review your curriculum, just make sure that we have a few weeks notice so that we can get the partners in place to do that for you.
And we're happy to do it. It's just that we need some lead time.
Yep,
Thank you.
Definitely, Marta. Thank you so much. And thanks. We've been able to review Midwood High School curriculum recently. They're going up for reapproval. Thank you for the staff members that you provided for that as well. And
Gav,
yes.
I'd like to thank you. We were approved.
Oh, you were?
By the DOE. Wait, we were approved by the DOE, and they have to send it to the state. So we were successful.
Excellent.
We have issues, as we all do, because of the new work-based learning challenges. But welcome to life. You know what I mean? we'll solve that issue too.
Yep, definitely.
But thank you very much for the help and the people that reviewed it. It was great. It was great.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Dr. Paisha. And on that note, I also wanted to announce that we do have an updated articulation agreement with NYIT. It covers all of our CTE, engineering and architecture programs. The one that we've been using over the past several years, of course, it's expiring this year, but if you are going up for approval or reapproval, we definitely do have an updated articulation. So just feel free to get in touch with me so that I can provide that letter to your principal so that they can sign it off. But we have that in place just to let you know. All right, so just to wrap up, are there any announcements? Does anyone on the Zoom call have any announcements that they want to make before we close out?
Other than,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say I want to thank Gav for his extraordinary work, as well as Jessica and their entire team, because I think the success of this program is because of their commitment and passion, and we really want to thank you.
Thank you for that, Mindy.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Anyone else?
Well, I wanted to say that we are ready to work with any high school that wants to offer some courses while the students are in high school, including leading to a certification. And this is Marta from New York Institute of Technology.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Marta, thanks to your dean who reviewed our curriculum.
Yes, no
He
problem.
was wonderful,
Yeah.
and came to the meeting.
Oh, cool.
All right, great. All right, everyone. So we've dropped the attendance link in the chat box. Just make sure you fill that out, please. Just take about 2 minutes or so, fill that out. It's in the chat box before you log out. And also, if you do need CTLE hours for attending these meetings, just shoot me an email and I'll get the certificate to you. And I see you there, Michael Bolus. I did email you some of the certificates already. And of course, you're gonna just expect a couple more coming your way from me, all right? So just shoot me an email if you need CTLE certificates. We do have our Construction and Sustainability Commission meeting coming up on Thursday, May 27th at 3 p.m. This same link that we used today. And you're all invited because I see so much overlap between the Construction Commission and this commission. So that's gonna be the very last commission for this school year. Again, thank you all. As you know, Shakira O'Kane, she resigned a couple of weeks ago, so I've taken over the Perkins duties. So if anybody has any questions about that, it's a very, very ambiguous world I work in. So if I seem like I go back and forth with a lot, it's not my fault, trust me. But it's a very, it's an interesting experience doing this kind of work, but thank you so much though for your patience and flexibility. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. You guys have my email, you have my number. I am the most accessible person you've ever met in central office. And I thank you for being great partners, great staff members. I absolutely love what I do because of all of you here. And I mean that at the bottom of my heart. These are not empty words that I'm saying to you. I say this all the time. I truly, generally love what I do and I don't plan to go anywhere. So just thank you for making this job so fun because it would be nothing without you guys. Thank you all and take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gav.
Bye.